Impact Driven Entrepreneur, episode 51. Today we're doing an on-air coaching session with Amisha, and it's all about your webinar.
Welcome to the Impact Driven Entrepreneur, the podcast that helps you expand your reach and convert that reach into clients so you can lead your tribe with confidence and create change in the world while living the life you desire. And now your host, certified business coach and consultant, Mariana Ruiz.
Welcome back to the Impact Driven Entrepreneur. Today we are going to be doing an on-air coaching session with Amisha. She's one of my long-term clients, and she is a member of the Impact Driven Entrepreneur, the Impact Formula. And so that is a really, really amazing session that I have for you today. And what's really great is that we really work through the blocks, like the mindset blocks, the actual blocks, right? Like the things that keep us stuck from getting that first webinar presentation up and going in our business. And because that is what's going to allow you to bring in consistent leads and sales in your business. It's one of the tools that you could use, right? It's not the only tool, but it is one of the tools. I also wanted to say thank you for those of you who have gone and left a review. Over the last couple of months, we've had some people reviewing the show and leaving us amazing, beautiful notes on iTunes. Isabel says, "It's been great to have confirmation of my own process through listening to the show." This person's URL name is unstuckable, but she says, "It's almost hard to believe the lessons Mariana is sharing on her podcast for free. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur, I can't think of a better mentor than Mariana. Start listening now." So if you have gotten anything out of this show, please take a moment to go rate us on iTunes. It helps the show to be discovered by more people, and that means more impact-driven entrepreneurs can get their message out there in a bigger way, can show up and serve their audience. So this is a mission that is near and dear to my heart. And let's get started with Amisha's on-air coaching session. Amisha and I have been working together for, probably like a year and a half now, and maybe even 2 years. Would you say that, Amisha? Could be.
Yeah, I think so. Yep,
yeah.
Coming up in summer.
Yeah.
Anniversary.
So, and we're going to be doing an on-air coaching session. She is a funnel expert. So her jam and what she's amazing at is creating opt-in funnels and copywriting. Like, you are an excellent copywriter. So today we're going to be doing an on-air coaching session, really for anything that's coming up for you, Amisha. But I know that in the preparing for this episode, we talked about, possibly it being around webinars. So wherever this takes us, and I'm excited to dive in. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
Yay. So tell me kind of like where you are with your webinar and what do you feel you need right now?
So where I am with my webinar, I am creating an outline. The things I want to talk about. I'm kind of making notes where I want to inject my story, kind of, create a desire for my audience and all that great stuff. And what is coming up for me is like, it's, I take 2 steps forward, like I will create a couple of slides and I'm in total flow. And then I take a step backward thinking or second guessing myself, like, is this going the right way? This being my first, I'm not a big stickler for rules, but I do know that there is a certain way to go about this, and I feel I'm going to be messing it up. So kind of that gets in the way, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take a break from this and come back to it when I feel like it. So yeah, it's just a stop and go kind of a deal. Maybe because it's my first.
Okay. And last time we talked, I had kind of suggested to you to like really set the date for the webinar to kind of move you along. Were you able to do that?
So in total honesty, my first date was supposed to be May 1st, which is not even a week from now. It's less than a week, but I think I'll have to backdate that. And I'm thinking May 8th.
Okay.
For sure.
So what I want you to do, since that's about 2 weeks out, I want you to start promoting it now. And
okay.
The reason for this is because things take as long as we give ourselves. So if we're not having external, external, I guess, motivation to be like, okay, this is the date, I really have to go live by this date, then it gets really hard and we keep pushing it back. And I can tell you 100% transparency here. Like, I did this in January with the webinar that I'm going to do next week. Right? So like, and my coach had told me to do this. He's like, set your date 2 weeks out and start promoting it. And then you have no choice but to be ready on that day. Right. And I had done it like that every other time, but this time I was getting into that perfection mode. So I think that will help you to redirect your focus so that you have that deadline and you're going to present on that day because you've already committed. You have people signed up for the email list, right? Like, you have no other option.
I know, right? Like, let the cat out of the bag and then just deal with it.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I want to explore a little bit of the mindset going into it, right? Because 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then getting in your head. That I want to like break that down. What's going on? What is your thought about what this webinar has to be?
You mean for the audience or the offer? What exactly?
All of it, right? Like, is it an expectation that you're holding for yourself that might not be realistic, right? Is what I really want to know.
That's a very good question. So I don't know if this is the right or the wrong answer, but I am setting low expectations. I don't know if that's right. But lately I've been doing everything in opposite to what's typically the norm, but and finding a little bit of success there. So maybe this is the right answer. I'm kind of lowering my expectations in terms of, how many people are going to show up and everything. I don't want to get sidetracked by that, because if I do, and if I go that direction, then I'll be obsessed with the numbers. Like, so many people have to register. So many people have to show up for the life stuff. I don't want to go in that direction at all. So I'm setting really low expectations. And I'm telling myself, other than my biz besties, which I have found thanks to your awesome community, and my coach, that's you, will probably suffer through it. I don't know who else will be there. And of course, people who I've worked with, my clients, and, people that I have great relations with. But other than that, if I'm putting this out there, like promoting it with Facebook ads and doing all that stuff, I don't know how many other people outside my current network will show up. And I'd like that, because those are the people I want to convert. I'm not setting expectations there. So I'm going very low expectations. And that's one for me. That's kind of keeping me grounded. It's working for me. Mm-hmm. What's not quite working is, okay, I've set low expectations, but I still got to deliver, because I still have peeps on, who are going to be there live, and they want something, because I have a lot of pride in what I do. And I feel like if I don't deliver, or, I need to feel proud of the final product. I need to feel like when I look back and I'm like, okay, that was good, I would buy from me. Mm-hmm. And I guess that kind of gets in my way, because I do have those tendencies of, trying to perfect it. Mm-hmm. And trying to give my best. And that's where I'm tripping up. Like the content, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What would make you proud of your work?
What would make me proud? That I have a finished webinar and a presentation, not so much about the prettiness, but, slides where I am able to move someone from point A to up to the last slide, point Z, saying, wow, that was really good. I learned so much from it. And if it's someone who wants to work, they would convert. That would be great. Mm-hmm. I just want to move them. I just want to have them leave that room or leave that webinar saying that was good. That I learned something. Even if I didn't buy, there could be people who have not. I learned something from that webinar. It was worth my time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, number one, your strength is in speaking. Every time you speak, you captivate. Like, this is your strength. So where is the self-doubt coming in you being able to deliver an amazing presentation? Because I have no doubt that you will.
I think and here's the thing, I do feed off of energy. I do, but sometimes midpoint of a presentation, and I've caught myself doing that many times when I do my lives too, somewhere midpoint, if I don't see interaction or some engagement, my spirit dips and so does my energy. And then I've got to, bring myself up, like, nope, keep going. I think that energy dip is what I'm kind of worried. And I'm afraid that's going to happen when I get to the pitching point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where it is, right? So then right around that point,
yes,
it's around the time that you're going to be going into the pitch. So of course,
yeah.
right? Okay. So what kind of support could you put in place to keep your energy high during that time?
Other than probably have my husband buy the sign up on the sales page. No, I'm just kidding. That would be good. I should make him do that. No. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is common, right? We getting to the pitch point is when I don't know, Mariana. I have to think. I mean, I can't say, okay, I'm going to take a moment and come back when I feel better and then pitch. But yeah, while I'm live, how do I don't know.
Okay, so here's some ideas. You mentioned like the biz besties, right? So you could ask them, hey, could you come on with me? I know you've worked with Nikki before, the VA, right? So maybe having him be live with you. Another thought that came to mind for me was kind of having some sort of mantra or something to center you back right before you go into the pitch.
That's good. Okay.
So there's some things you could do on your own, right? Like the mantra. And I want you to have some things for your own, but I would love it if you could call in some, call a friend on right, on the rest of it, right? Like I know in the Impact Formula, there's actually a couple other people who are going to be doing webinars. I'm one of them, right? So maybe we could just do a group of like all the people who are doing webinars will get together and be on each other's and engage and all that.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So we could do something like that. And you know how I always do these off groups and like these off support things from the regular program. But something like that could work and help you to create that engagement midway through.
Yeah. What's your thought on, and I'm not very good at small talk, the first 5 to 10 minutes of, when you're starting, do you have tips on how to get over that? Like, when you're like, hey, and you're kind of, supposed to be upbeat, and I can be upbeat, but yeah. I know I'll be a little nervous because it's live and, they can see me. So what are your thoughts about that? How do you transition from there and start?
So my go-to for those kind of things, I'm with you. I hate small talk. I'm an introvert. Okay, I really don't like it. It makes me feel so awkward. So what I normally do is go to the traditional things, the weather, the kids, right? Like those are usually pretty benign topics, right? It's not like we're going into the news or something like that, right? Yeah. Pretty benign topics. Everyone has that situation, at least in our audiences, right? I think most of your people are also parents. Right. So, and the weather, everyone is experiencing their own weather, right? So you can keep it like that. It's light and it can kind of fill that space in the beginning.
Okay. And do you typically, and I know this is crazy, but do you set a timer?
No, I don't set a timer. I just I will get on about 5 minutes prior. And then right at the time that I said it was going to start, I will start it at that time. So it's not really a timer, but it kind of is. So I will actually start getting on the webinar 5 minutes early. So if I said I was going to get on at 1, I'll get on at, 12:55, and then I will start at 1.
Okay. And what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm assuming, are you going to be using Zoom? Because I am.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you leave the chat box? How often do you look into the chat box to see if there are comments or if there's anything? Or is that distracting?
So I have questions kind of throughout the presentation to kind of ask for feedback, kind of like a Facebook Live.
Okay.
And so whenever those come up, I will have that slide up for the question, and then I'll take some time to go into the chat box and look through what's there. It does get distracting if people are doing side conversations. So you can have it set up to where only you can see the questions coming through, and that will cut back on the side conversations. But I have had it where clients use that chat, and then people are helping each other, and then they all join together to the program, especially if it's like a group, because it's, you know, it's already building that community, kind of like a Facebook group would for if you were doing a challenge or something, right? So it's a kind of different experience, but it, you know, if you're going to be the one going in there, I might try technically, if you can, to just like turn that off for your first round. And,
okay.
And that way only they can submit to you. That way they're not having a full conversation, because then you have more to scroll through. And then for like second, third, fourth round, you can have, you know, a VA like Nikki or somebody else going through that for you and answering the questions, and somebody else supporting you there.
Okay. So
or if you want to have him do that this time, that's fine too.
Gotcha. And do you ask questions for every slide that's put up?
No. What do you mean? Like every slide ask a question?
Like when you're engaging with the audience, do you have a question after you're done with, or, you know, when you read off the slide and you're done with that teaching point, do you ask a question, or is there a rule of thumb, like how many questions do you ask after a certain number of slides?
No, there's no rules. I mostly ask questions that are, how do I put them? Like they're emotional questions, and you can submit me your questions, but they're questions which are kind of like, yeah, I get this problem, and yes, I have this problem, right? Like they're those kind of questions.
Gotcha.
It's evoking the emotion of, oh my God, yeah, that's me. Because the more, and this is kind of how, there's a way that we can, you know, in a sales presentation, the more yeses you get from people, even if it's just in their mind, the more yeses you get from them, the more likely they're going to say yes to your offer at the end, because they've already developed a pattern of saying yes.
I like that. So ask more of a yes or no question, like a close-ended?
No, more like like you want kind of a head nodding question. So, have you ever experienced something like this? Yes. Right. Well, that is a closed-ended question, right? But kind of like those kind of things.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
you see this on Facebook Lives all the time. People will say, put a 1 in the comments if you blah, 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 right? Like you've seen that on lives, and that's exactly kind of the strategy there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, that's great. Do you model anybody in particular when you are, I know this is funny, anyone's technique, or, because I know you work with so many amazing people, you are so well read. Is there anyone who comes to mind when you're thinking, I'd like my webinar to turn out this way because this person does it this way? Do you kind of follow anyone's framework, or is this your own doing entirely?
I've combined like a bunch of different ones, but the main people that I have followed is Russell Brunson, James Wedmore, my mentor, Amy Porterfield. But then again, like, here's the thing, all 3 of them teach 3 different ways, and almost even like if you get too much down this line of trying to do it all perfect, and here's what happens, right? And that's why I found myself delaying that webinar, like I mentioned in January. It's because I had these three different, very polar opposite teaching styles, right? Like, for example, James Wedmore teaches to put a lot of words on your slides, and Amy Porterfield teaches to put very few words on your slide. And who's right? Right? Like, who is right? And the only answer, and this is kind of how I've come to teaching this, is you have to test, you have to go with your own gut of what feels right to you and what's going to feel more genuine to you. And then lastly, you got to test it. So what I mean by that is, in this webinar, you're going to do it in this way. However it comes out, that's the baseline, right? And then the next webinar, which are you going to be doing weekly or bi-weekly?
I'd like to do it weekly.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. And I'm going to come back to this in a minute. And so the next webinar you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to just tweak maybe wherever there was a stop or it felt off, right? You're going to go back and just fix that one area, right? So you're not going to just change all of the follow-up sequence, all of the, initial, right? Like, we're going to look at the numbers, and the numbers are going to guide us to tell us where to put the focus to change things. Other than that, we're going to run the same thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, let's say maybe the actual presentation isn't converting well. And that's the opportunity to say, let me test it, Amy Porterfield style, let me test it, James Wedmore style, right? Like, really and truly, like, they've all developed their own system, and their system works for them. And so what we're doing is developing your system for you.
Yep.
And it's going to be where the intersection is between your expertise and your, how you speak, how you present, and all of that, and your audiences, right? What they like. Because ultimately those numbers are going to be guided by them.
That's true. Do you, and I haven't taken any webinar course, I follow you and whatever you teach in the program. What's your opinion on, but I have read Russell Brunson's book and I think it's amazing. What's your opinion on refraining from teaching, and do the other two experts tell you to teach? I mean, how do you approach that on a webinar? Are you teaching at all, or what is it that you're doing? Yeah,
so I do agree with Russell in that he asks us to really do, instead of teaching, and it's not so much about the teaching, what's more important is the aha moments, the epiphany bridges, the psychological transformation, right? And that, I think, is an important piece that the others are not always teaching. And so they are teaching it in a way, but they're saying for you to teach. And like me and you being, people who have studied for a long time, right? Like how many classes have we taken, right? Like, we're all really studious, right? So when you say to us, teach, it's something very different than if you're going to market something and teach, right?
True.
And so I like how Russell teaches that, because it helps us to realize that the content has to be moving people. And so, yes, you can teach, but I think it's really important to have that teaching be moving towards the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
So for, and I don't know, do you remember how April in the guest expert thing last week, she said she really likes kind of like the myth busting webinar, because it does.
Yes.
I mean, inherently, when you're doing those myth busting, what you're actually doing is creating aha moments and epiphany bridges, which is exactly what Russell teaches.
Yes, I totally agree. I think I'm more, and even me as someone who's participating in one, I'm more, likely to attend those than someone telling me 3 secrets or,
Mm-hmm.
the myth busting, because I think at least I feel that's very close to where I am kind of now at the stage in business that I am now. Like, all the stuff that I've learned, and a lot of it doesn't work. And I really want to know that what is the stuff that it's been fed and it doesn't work anymore, and who's busting those myths. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, and it's also very in line with your personality, right? Like you're a lot more direct and just open, right? Like, so I think for you, that might be a strategy to use. Like, what is your current content going to be for the webinar?
So, great question. The current content is, well, some of the myths that I'm busting is, the people that I help, they have all paid a lot of money to create high-end premium programs, and they are overwhelmed. And that's the myth that I want to bust, that when you're starting out, and I don't necessarily mean you don't know who you're serving, what's your message, all of that. No, these are people who are talented. They're great at what they do. However, they think to make it in the online world, you have to create a high-end program and charge a lot of money. But what I'm here to tell them is that you don't, and you can start with something small. Take an idea, start something small, get a cash injection in the business, and that's where I set up funnels. Get some cash coming in, relaunch, take that same idea, expand it a little further. Again, that's level 2, expand it, and again, retest it, again, relaunch it, again, expand it, and you are scaling from something small and taking it big. Mm-hmm. We're just reversing the pyramid instead of going high level, and, the signature program and charge 10K, which is kind of scary because you don't know everything. Mm-hmm. And if you think that you have to put out a signature program starting at a 10K level, it's overwhelming. You don't know what you don't know. So you can, and when you're stuck in that, you can't create. You're spending months and months trying to come up with a program. You're wasting time, you're wasting resources, and you're not making money. And I know that because that was me. Mm-hmm. Prime example, I tried to create a high launch, great program, but I was ignoring opportunities, the small offers that could have become big. I ignored those. So it's just putting your focus into starting small and then scaling it from there. Yeah. You can make 10K, but just you don't have to start out at 10K is what I'm trying to tell them.
Yeah. And it's a lot more doable for somebody to start with like a small offer. I love this. Okay. So that's going to be the number one, like when they walk, I just want to recap, like you said, I'm going to go back to my notes. You said, I want them to have value by the time that they walk away from this webinar. And what you just described there is a huge mental shift that they can, if they go turn around and apply it, they will have sales in their business, right? Because if they have been trying to sell this $10,000 thing and they're so afraid of the $10,000 thing that they're not actually selling it, but they turn around, they create like a $25 offer or a $50 offer or a $100 offer, they could have sales tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think, it's also a shift for you in seeing like the objective that you really wanted for the people was to have walking away with something valuable to them. And it is absolutely without a doubt.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to go back to was this thing about doing webinars regularly, right? So instead of thinking about this webinar as a single event that you have to have, like you said, you wanted to have pride in your work and have that presentation be really good. I want you to be okay with B- work. Okay. I know you're like, I can just sense that you're like, what? That is not okay. But here's why.
I'm listening.
Here's why. Because it is through the process of doing the weekly webinar, or even if you did bi-weekly, or even if you did once a month, that it can get to A+ work. That is what's going to get it to A+ work, because you're going to have the data from your audience. It's impossible to get to A+ on the first round. And so if that's your expectation, it's an impossibility.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. And especially if I'm going to be doing it regularly, then I should take the pressure off. It's not like my one and only chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's one event in 1 week of how many? Probably 10 or more, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think for me, that was a huge shift from the way that I was initially taught webinars to how James taught me to do webinars. And when he taught me this concept, I was like, suddenly, I was just like, oh my God, like I don't have to put, like I used to feel that like for me to do a launch or to do a webinar, that it meant like it was this or nothing, right? Like, or nothing, like all or nothing almost kind of mindset. And
Yes.
when I changed it to this mindset of it is a back and forth dialogue between myself and my audience for a number of weeks. And I have weeks to get this to the point that I feel really, really proud of it and that I might be able to put it on autopilot. But without doing that back and forth dialogue for several weeks, I'm not going to have A+ work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I feel better.
Good. Okay. I know for me, that was like a huge, huge mindset shift that really allowed me to be open to doing webinars again, because I had like some very bad experiences
Oh boy.
early on. So yeah, so knowing that, it's a system that you're testing and tweaking. It's more of like being an experimenter in it.
I like that approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else coming up for you about 2 steps forward, 1 step back? I just want to make sure we got all of that.
No, I think it's fine. I mean, I think the pressure's gone. I don't have to get this perfect. And this being my one of the first events, I can go a little lax. I mean, on the rules. Yeah. And I think, I have you holding my hand through this, and I know the presentation is going to be fine. I can practice it, have you look it over, and I think I'm just going to go with it. I'm not going to overthink this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I need to, it's on a side note, it's been beautiful outside. It's spring. I think, keeping my mind a little more high vibe, it's definitely going to help. It has actually helped this week. I've been, going out for my walks more. I'm coming back happier. Yeah, I feel good. I'm feeling good. I'm not feeling a sense of dread as much. It's definitely been better.
Good. Okay. Yeah, the sense of dread is usually from that internal pressure, right, that we're putting on ourselves, right? Because if the expectation is, even though the expectation was not with the goals, I feel like the expectation was around the content, right?
Yes, correct.
And so there was still that pressure of expectation. It was just in a different way.
Totally.
Anything else coming up for you that you want to cover?
No, I can't. I can't think of anything. I think I'm good. I think I'm good where I am right now, and I think the next step is really to get the outline done and start working on a promotional, promotional strategy. And for that, do you recommend? And I know I'm definitely doing the ads, but how many ad sets would you run? And I know this is your zone of genius. Like, how many ads would you run at a time when you're doing webinar on a weekly basis? What should someone budget if this is ongoing?
Okay. So what you want to do is you want to use the launch calculator that I gave you. And you're going to want to plug in like what it would take for you to get a client a week. That's where I would initially start. Is if you got 1 client per webinar, that would be a good ROI usually. So
Okay.
what is the ad budget that's going to have to go into that to get a client 1? Okay. So my initial tests for the webinar would start with, okay, let me work the system so I can get 1 or 2 clients on that first 1 or 2 webinars. Okay. And so my ad budget would be to mirror that. then I would, that gives you some opportunity to tweak the system. If you're not getting one client or two clients, and I will say, if you're opening it up to your warm audience, that first webinar will have the highest amount of registrants because it's going to be your warm audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one is going to be cold traffic. So it's going to be a little bit different, okay? But for the first one, I would just budget for around what it would cost for you to get one client or the price of your program. I don't want you to spend, like, here's where I made a mistake before. So I mentioned how I was feeling really burned from webinars. And the reason for that was because on my first webinar one time, I was selling a $200-ish program, and I invested $1,000 in ads, and I had hired somebody to run my ads. So that was another $1,000. So that was a $2,000 investment.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and it was scary because it felt like that, like I said, right? Like all the pressure was on, right? To make back the 2,000. And what I didn't realize is very similar to what you're teaching on the webinar, right? Is that we can start small. And so for the first test, for the first week that I run a webinar, I will just spend what it will take for me to either get one client or to, if I just sold one copy, that I would break even. And I run my own ads now because after that experience, I realized, hey, I'm actually pretty good at running ads. But,
yes, you are.
yeah, but, I had to go through all of that to even own that I was even able to. Okay. So that kind of is deterring from the question that you asked me. So to answer your question, I would invest as much as to be able to get one client or to just sell one and make back the investment. That's what I would do. And the reason for that is because I messed that up. Now, I did break even on that webinar, but it was entirely too much work to be breaking even. Weeks of going through all this and then breaking even. Like, it sucked.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So if if on the other hand, you're like, okay, I'm going to invest like 300, my program's, 2,000, or how much is your program? It's the 500 one, or yeah.
Yes.
Okay, 500. So if you invest 500, you're like, okay, I invested 500, I made one sale, cool. Like, I broke even. It's a much different conversation than investing 2,000 and it's a $200 program, right? Like
Yeah.
right. So that's kind of how I would play with that. Okay, and you would use that in the calculator.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Then, as far as like the details of the ad set itself. So what I found is that on average, like if you start off with like, if this is for cold audience, okay, for warm audience, like I said, you're gonna run ads to your warm audience. It's gonna convert, at a much lower cost per lead. But for your cold audience, I would do like a bunch of tests. Like in the beginning, it's going to feel scary because you're going to do like 8 or 10 tests, which means at $5 a day, that's $50 on testing.
Okay.
It feels super scary. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's why you do that, because you're going to eventually prune most of those. Like, I know the last time I launched, I did that. I was spending around 200, I think, that first couple of days. And I ended up pruning it down to, after the initial, you're going to run them initially. And then after about 72 hours, you're going to go back and see what happened. And then I ended up tweaking it back, and I ended up with maybe 3 or 4 that were like true winners. And then that I optimized those. And so initially you're going to start with a higher number of tests, and then you're going to prune it. That's a strategy to use. Now, if there's somebody, maybe one audience does well, you can duplicate that and we can play with that in the back end. But initially it's going to be a lot of testing to really find your audience, your, the messaging, the copy, like all of those like different facets of it. And then you're going to prune it down. And I'll tell you, like every time that I do this, by the end of my launch, if I have invested, like in this last launch, I invested, I think, around 500. And I honestly can tell you at the end of the launch, I was like, man, I wish I would have spent 1,000. Because I could see the translation of the ad spend into the clients that came in. And there were literally clients that had no idea who I was who purchased from me by the end of the launch.
Wow. That's amazing.
Into a, $2,500 program. So the reason I share that is because I think we get in our head, like, is it really possible that somebody that doesn't know me is going to buy from the first time on my webinar? And I'll tell you, I did not believe that was possible until my last launch, because I was always mostly running almost all my budget to warm traffic. And I didn't give myself a chance to test enough to see if that was possible.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's inspiring. I feel better.
Yeah. So we're going to start with a lot of tests to where it's a little bit uncomfortable. And then we're going to prune it back and really what's converting, and then do more of what's converting, and you can get that ad budget back up.
Okay. And would you recommend running the ads 2 weeks prior? So say May 8th is the webinar. So 2 weeks of ads consistently?
I would start them about 10 days prior, because those first 3 days are kind of shot. Like it's just the algorithm trying to find your people. And then, so it's really like 7 days really of solid advertising.
Okay. So start 10 days prior at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And if you're doing weekly webinars, like every time I've done webinars regularly, I can't do weekly. This is totally a limiting belief of mine, as you can tell. But I usually just do every other week. But I have heard of people who do every week webinars, and they just run the same ad. They keep the ad, they keep the landing page, and they just change the date when the new week rolls over. So you can try that, and that will keep your same asset because you've already then optimized it. You can just keep it going, right? So ideally, I'd love to try that in this round of my testing with webinars. So that's kind of, I'll let you know in the group because I'll be living that.
I have the confirmation email from you, and I was really looking, because you write good emails. I was looking forward to getting the webinar emails. I have not got that. I was like, let me see what she's putting out so I can kind of create mine too. Mm-hmm. How many emails do you have set up to go out?
Oh my gosh. My email campaign thing has been so messed up. Okay. I'll have to check that. Usually I do like, hold on, I have a whole thing in the impact formula. I have a whole thing, but usually it's like 3 to 5, something like that. Depends on when they sign up.
Like 3 to 5 before.
Yeah, because if they sign up 10 days before, it's 10 whole days. So they're going to get like 5. But if they sign up like the day before, they're going to get like 2, right? So it just depends on when they sign up.
Okay. So 5 emails in total before.
Yeah, okay. It's not a ton. It's not like every day or anything like that.
Okay. And how many after for the follow-up?
So this goes back to what I usually say. It doesn't matter the number. What matters is the psychology, right? Like, did we present a case for purchasing? And so that's where you want to use like your objections and your all of that, highlighting what's possible. All right, so we can look at that on the back end, but there's not a right number. It's more about, did we present a solid case of evidence to purchase?
Okay. And that's something to think about, I think, during presentation itself, right? The slides, when you're doing the webinar.
Yeah, even before you go to the slides, right? So that webinar or that launch admin sheet that I have in the program, that's where you're working through what are the results, what are the objections, what's the transformation. Like as you're working through that, you already have it. It's like if you've done the launch admin sheet, your follow-up sequence is essentially done. You just have to, elaborate on the stories and case studies that you've already written and that you've given examples for.
Okay. I'll have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has been so helpful.
Yay, so glad. Okay, I'm excited.
Me too.
So I think this is going to be so much fun. This is going to be so
I know.
I'm excited for everyone to like team up together too, because I think that's a really good idea to just support each other since there are a bunch of people doing this. So
yeah, I cannot tell you. I mean, and I know this is a shameful plug for your community and the program, but that community has been so instrumental from where I started to where I've been able to do just in these last couple of months. So, that support system is so valuable. Like, guys, I mean, if you do not have that, I mean, find it, because you can really be held accountable and people are cheering you on. I mean, I posted stuff at midnight and I have like 2-3 people commenting like, do this, here's mine. And it just makes life so much easier. And it makes it more fun.
Yeah, because you feel like you have people by your side. You're not like working on your own.
Yeah. You just feel so lonely otherwise. But it's it's definitely it's been so helpful.
Yay! Thank you. Okay, have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on.
Yep, this was fun. Thanks, Mariana.
So there you have it, another episode of the Impact Driven Entrepreneur podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something from this episode, please share it with one friend or share it on your social profile and tag me. I will totally shout you out and give you tons of love and praise for sharing the podcast and getting the word out about what we're doing here in the Impact Driven Entrepreneur podcast. The other housekeeping thing I wanted to say is you can find links to all of the resources we mentioned in the show notes section at impactdrivenentrepreneur.com, I'm including a way for you to get a free copy of Russell's book, Expert Secrets, which is going to help you with creating your own webinar system. And it's an excellent resource. So go to the show notes page to get that. I love ClickFunnels, which is his software to help you with doing regular webinars. It's been really, really helpful in my business. And so, of course, I'm an affiliate for it, but it is at no additional cost to you. I get a very, very small commission. So those are the things I have for you. Have an amazing week. Please, please, please share this episode with a friend if you found it helpful. And I will see you next week. We are talking with Jaya Rose all about owning your greatness even more. Head on over to impactdrivenentrepreneur.com where you can find an arsenal of videos, blog posts, and previous podcast episodes to help you increase your profit and impact. Again, impactdrivenentrepreneur.com and click on blog. Enjoy.